The Galactic Empire's fleet hovered silently at the edge of the solar system, its massive warships gleaming under distant stars. The alien officers inside joked among themselves, amused at the prospect of Earth's inevitable defeat. They had conquered planets with advanced civilizations before. Earth was nothing but a primitive, backwater world. Supreme Commander Tvok, an imposing figure with scaled skin and sharp, calculating eyes, addressed his officers. "This planet will fall within hours. Their weapons are laughable, their tactics outdated. Let us make this quick and efficient." The officers nodded in agreement, barely containing their smug grins. "What a joke," one of them muttered. "Sending our finest fleet for this?" As the massive landing crafts descended upon Earth, the invasion force prepared to meet little resistance. The first wave of troops touched down, stepping out into the open fields, greeted by Earth's military defenses. The humans had deployed tanks, aircraft, and soldiers, tools that seemed ancient compared to the Galactic Empire's advanced technology. Plasma rifles ripped through the sky, and alien tanks rolled forward, blasting away at anything that moved. From the command center, the alien commanders watched the feeds from the battlefield with bored expressions. "Too easy," said one, taking a sip from his flask. "This will be over by dinner." What they failed to notice was the small team of humans watching from a hidden vantage point. Captain Spectre, leader of the Navy SEAL unit, observed the chaos through his binoculars. He turned to his men, who were outfitted in gear designed for stealth and efficiency. "They're arrogant. They think they've already won," Spectre said quietly. His voice was calm, composed. "That's their first mistake." One of his team members smirked. "They don't know what's coming." Spectre nodded. "We'll show them." The SEALs were experts in asymmetric warfare. They didn't need the numbers or the firepower that the aliens had. What they had was knowledge of the terrain, years of training, and the element of surprise. They operated in the shadows, striking where the enemy least expected. As the aliens continued their onslaught, Spectre's team moved silently through the thick forests surrounding the battlefield. Their target, an Imperial communications hub. The Empire's soldiers were careless, their confidence blinding them to the dangers of Earth's wilderness. Spectre's team moved like ghosts, bypassing security and disabling alarms without a sound. They reached the hub, a massive tower pulsing with energy. One by one, the SEALs planted explosives at key structural points. "Charge is set," one of the SEALs whispered. Spectre glanced at his watch. "Move out." 10 seconds. The team vanished into the forest just as the tower erupted in a flash of fire and debris. The explosion knocked out communications across the region, throwing the Empire's forces into confusion. Inside the command center, alarms blared. The officers, once smug and relaxed, now looked at the screens in disbelief. "What happened?" one of them shouted. "We've lost contact with Sector 7. Another replied, panic edging into his voice. "Impossible! Their technology is nowhere near sophisticated enough to." "They didn't use technology," Supreme Commander Tvok interrupted, his voice cold. "They used their environment. This was no accident." The mood in the room shifted. The officers who had once laughed at Earth's defenders were now on edge. They had expected a quick and easy conquest. Instead, they were facing an enemy who was elusive, unpredictable, and far more dangerous than they had anticipated. Meanwhile, Spectre and his team retreated to their hidden base deep within the wilderness. The Empire's forces scrambled to regain control, but without communication, they were vulnerable. "We hit them where it hurts, but they'll recover," Spectre said to his team. "We need to keep the pressure on." The team gathered around, checking their gear and preparing for the next mission. They knew they were outnumbered and outgunned, but none of them wavered. This was their home, and they were not about to let these invaders take it without a fight. As night fell, Spectre looked out over the battlefield, where the Empire's forces had begun to regroup. The air was heavy with tension, the calm before the storm. "They think they've seen the worst of us," he murmured to himself. "But we're just getting started." The Empire's forces were in disarray. After the communications hub went dark, their carefully laid plans had crumbled. Orders weren't reaching the troops, and the soldiers, used to clear directives and total control, now found themselves stumbling in confusion. In the silence of the forest, Spectre and his team moved swiftly, unseen. It was time for the next strike. They had studied the enemy's patterns, knowing that the Empire relied too much on technology, assuming it would cover their every weakness. Spectre's team understood that reliance would be their downfall. The SEALs crept toward a key supply convoy, its bright lights cutting through the night as it lumbered along a dirt road. Imperial guards stood lazily at their posts, completely unaware of the danger creeping toward them. With precise coordination, Spectre signaled his team. In mere moments, the lights of the convoy flickered and died as the SEALs cut power to the engines. The convoy halted, confused voices crackling over radios, but no one could see where the attack was coming from. In the darkness, Spectre's men struck like ghosts, taking down the guards without a sound, leaving nothing but the eerie quiet of the forest behind. Spectre moved in close to the lead vehicle, setting explosives that would delay any potential reinforcements. His hands worked fast, methodical, knowing that every second counted. "Charges in place," he whispered into his radio. His team was already fading back into the trees, the mission complete before the enemy even realized it had begun. The explosion lit up the night, sending shockwaves through the Empire's lines. What was left of the convoy lay scattered across the road, burning. Alien officers screamed into their radios, demanding answers, but all they got was static. The Imperial troops were now isolated, cut off from supplies, their confidence beginning to crack. Back at their makeshift base, Spectre and his team watched the chaos unfold. They had struck a decisive blow, but it was more than just physical destruction. They were sowing fear, confusion, and doubt into the hearts of the invaders. "They're starting to panic," one of the SEALs noted, watching the infrared feed. "Look at them. They don't even know what hit them." Spectre nodded, his eyes scanning the screen. "They rely too much on control. We take that from them, they crumble." The psychological warfare was working. The once arrogant Empire, which had scoffed at Earth's defenses, now faced an enemy that refused to fight on their terms. The SEALs used the forest, the weather, the terrain, things the Empire couldn't control and didn't understand. And now, the alien invaders were seeing how dangerous that could be. In the following days, Spectre's team struck again and again. Small, precise hits that crippled key infrastructure, supply lines, communications, and even the Empire's morale. Each time, they left no trace, just destruction and a growing sense of dread among the alien troops. The SEALs didn't need big victories. They only needed to keep the Empire guessing, always one step behind. Imperial soldiers began to crack under the pressure. They started firing at shadows, jumpy and afraid of what might be lurking in the trees. Rumors spread through the ranks, stories of an invisible human force that could strike at will and disappear without a trace. The mighty Galactic Empire, undefeated across star systems, was losing its nerve. Supreme Commander Tvok was furious. He couldn't understand how a few humans were wreaking such havoc on his forces. He stood in the command center, watching the reports come in, each one worse than the last. His officers scrambled to come up with explanations, but none of them had any answers. "They're using primitive tactics," one officer said, desperation creeping into his voice. "They can't possibly stand against us for much longer." Tvok's eyes narrowed. "These are not primitive tactics. This is precision. This is calculated. And it's tearing us apart." In the shadows, Spectre and his team prepared for their next move. They had planted the seeds of fear, and now it was time to harvest the results. Spectre understood his enemy better than they understood him. They were used to controlling the battlefield, but now they were trapped in one they couldn't predict. He would keep pushing, forcing them to react until they made mistakes, until they were so rattled they'd be too afraid to fight. Spectre's team didn't have the luxury of rest, but they didn't need it. They thrived on this kind of warfare, outnumbered but never outmatched. Their every strike was a reminder to the Empire that Earth was far from the easy target they had assumed it to be. As the Empire's frustration grew, Spectre's team prepared for the final stages of their plan. They would continue to erode the Empire's control, targeting their leadership and breaking their chain of command. Each mission was a piece of a larger puzzle, designed to bring the Galactic Empire to its knees without ever engaging them in a direct, large-scale battle. The alien soldiers now feared the night, the forests, and the silence. They feared the humans they couldn't see, couldn't track, and couldn't kill. For the first time, the Galactic Empire was facing an enemy that didn't play by their rules, and it was destroying them from the inside out. The Imperial convoy lay in ruins, smoke still rising from the wreckage, but that was only the beginning. As the Galactic Empire scrambled to regain control, Spectre's team prepared to take things further. They had studied the Empire's tactics, their movements, and now it was time to strike a more devastating blow. The Empire believed in overwhelming power, numbers, technology, brute force. Spectre believed in precision. He led his team toward their next target, a high-ranking Imperial officer who was key to the entire invasion strategy. Isolating him from the rest of the command would cause a chain reaction of disorder among the Empire's forces. Under the cover of darkness, Spectre and his team moved swiftly through the terrain, bypassing patrols, using their intimate knowledge of the environment to their advantage. They had become shadows, ghosts that haunted the Imperial troops. Their target was aboard a heavily fortified transport. Alien guards were stationed around the perimeter, but they were no match for Spectre's tactics. The SEALs silently neutralized the guards, leaving no trace of their presence. Spectre himself entered the transport, coming face to face with the officer, a towering alien who radiated confidence and arrogance. That confidence quickly faded when he realized who had captured him. Spectre's presence was enough to unnerve him, and the officer's attempts at defiance quickly gave way to fear. The SEALs moved quickly, extracting the officer and disappearing into the night before any alarms could be raised. By the time the Empire realized their officer was missing, it was too late. The officer had been taken to a hidden location, where Spectre began the interrogation. It didn't take long to break him. The officer, rattled by the stealth and efficiency of his captors, gave up valuable intelligence, weak points in the Empire's command structure, vulnerabilities they had overlooked. With this new information, Spectre's team began planning their next series of strikes. They weren't just taking down soldiers or supplies now, they were targeting the Empire's leadership, the minds behind the invasion. This wasn't just about sabotage anymore. It was about dismantling the invasion from the top down. But before they moved forward, Spectre decided to send a message. They needed to show the Empire that Earth wasn't to be underestimated, and fear alone wouldn't be enough. Spectre recorded a message and broadcast it to the Empire's fleet, knowing it would spread quickly through their ranks. His voice was calm but laced with the unshakable resolve that had brought them this far. "You thought we were weak," Spectre said. "You thought this planet was yours for the taking. Now you know better. We are not prey. We are the hunters." The message rippled through the Empire's forces, unsettling even their most seasoned warriors. They had never faced an enemy like this, one that could move without being seen, one that could strike without warning, and one that refused to be intimidated by superior firepower. The Galactic officers, who once scoffed at Earth's defenders, now whispered in fear, wondering who would be next. Supreme Commander Tvok sat in his command chair, his hands gripping the armrests in frustration. His invasion was falling apart, and he didn't understand how. Earth's forces should have been crushed by now, yet they were gaining ground. Worse, they were making the Empire look weak. And weakness was not something the Galactic Empire tolerated. "Find them!" Tvok barked at his subordinates. "I don't care what it takes, I want those humans crushed." His officers scrambled to respond, but their confidence had been shaken. The humans were no longer just a nuisance. They had become a serious threat. Every step the Empire took was met with resistance, and their own troops were beginning to question whether victory was even possible. Spectre and his team, meanwhile, continued their mission. Armed with the intelligence they had extracted from the captured officer, they struck at the Empire's command posts, disrupting their communications and cutting off their ability to coordinate their forces. Each hit was precise, calculated to inflict maximum damage with minimum resources. The Empire's command structure began to fracture. With key leaders missing or incapacitated, the alien troops found themselves without direction. Some units retreated, others tried to hold their ground, but all of them were fighting blind. The once unified invasion force was now a collection of scattered, confused battalions. But Spectre wasn't done yet. He knew that to truly win this fight, they needed to deliver one final, crushing blow. The Empire's morale was already faltering, but they needed a symbolic victory, something that would not only cripple the enemy's ability to fight but also send a message to the entire galaxy. The SEALs prepared for their most daring mission yet, an assault on the Empire's Central Command Center. This was the heart of the invasion, where the highest-ranking officials controlled the entire operation. Taking it down would send shockwaves through the Galactic Empire, not just on Earth but across all the star systems under their control. As they prepared for the mission, Spectre's team was more focused than ever. They had come this far against impossible odds, and now they had the chance to deliver a victory that would resonate far beyond this planet. Spectre looked at his men, each of them ready, each of them committed to the fight. "The Empire came here thinking they could crush us," Spectre said, his voice steady and determined. "But now they know the truth. Earth isn't just fighting back, we're winning." With that, the SEALs moved out, their final mission underway. They had the intelligence, they had the skill, and most importantly, they had the resolve. The Galactic Empire had never faced anything like them, and now, they were about to feel the full force of humanity's will to survive. Spectre's team had everything they needed for the final strike. The intelligence gathered from the captured officer gave them the layout of the Empire's command center, the nerve center of the invasion. If they could take it out, the entire operation would collapse. The SEALs knew this was the most dangerous mission yet, but it was also the one that could end the war. They approached the command center with the same precision that had defined every mission. This time, the stakes were higher, but the team moved without hesitation. Spectre's plan was clear: get in, disable the command structure, and leave the Empire in complete disarray. As they reached the perimeter, the team split up, each member knowing their role. Spectre advanced toward the core of the command center, where the Empire's highest-ranking officers were coordinating the invasion. Their arrogance still blinded them. Even with all the chaos, they never believed a small team could infiltrate their most secure facility. Once inside, the SEALs worked with ruthless efficiency. They bypassed security systems, disabled key power sources, and positioned themselves to strike at the heart of the Empire's operation. The Empire's forces outside were still in disarray, and their inability to communicate effectively had left them vulnerable. This was what Spectre had been working toward all along, a moment where the Empire's superiority meant nothing in the face of sheer human determination and tactical brilliance. Inside the control room, the alien officers were frantically trying to restore order. Conflicting reports were coming in from the battlefield, and without clear leadership, their forces were splintering. Spectre moved swiftly, neutralizing the few remaining guards and taking control of the command center. He knew the mission was almost complete, but there was one last thing to do. With the Empire's command system at his fingertips, Spectre broadcast a final message to the entire invading force. His voice, calm and measured, echoed through every Imperial ship and outpost across the planet. "This invasion is over. Your leaders have failed you. Earth is not yours, and it never will be." The effect was immediate. Across the battlefield, Imperial soldiers, already demoralized and leaderless, began to retreat. The once mighty Galactic Empire, confident in its technological superiority, had been brought to its knees by a handful of humans. The troops who had laughed at Earth's defenders were now fleeing for their lives, unsure where the next attack might come from. As the SEALs watched the chaos unfold, Spectre knew the battle was won. The Empire's forces were in full retreat, their command structure obliterated, and their morale shattered beyond repair. But the cost of the fight was clear. Earth had survived, but it had been a hard-fought victory. The scars of the invasion would remain long after the last Imperial ship had fled the planet. Spectre and his team regrouped, their mission complete. They had done what seemed impossible, defeated an enemy that had never been beaten. But Spectre wasn't celebrating. There was no need for triumph. This was a fight for survival, and they had won because they had no other choice. The Empire's remaining ships withdrew from Earth's atmosphere, their once grand invasion reduced to a humiliating failure. The Galactic Empire had underestimated humanity, and that mistake had cost them dearly. Spectre and his team knew that the Empire would never forget what had happened here, and they would think twice before ever returning to Earth. But for now, the SEALs had done their job. They had defended their home, not with overwhelming force or superior technology, but with skill, cunning, and the unbreakable will to protect what was theirs. The Empire had come expecting an easy victory, and instead, they had been taught a lesson in humility and fear. In the aftermath of the battle, as the skies cleared and Earth began to rebuild, Spectre reflected on what they had accomplished. The Galactic Empire had considered humans weak, but now the entire galaxy would know that Earth was not a planet to be taken lightly. They had fought, they had survived, and they had won. Spectre turned to his team, who stood ready for whatever came next. They had faced the impossible and come out on top, but they knew the fight was never really over. Somewhere, in the depths of space, the Empire was regrouping, planning their next move. But this time, they would come knowing that Earth had defenders who couldn't be intimidated, couldn't be outmatched. As the team prepared to return to their base, Spectre left one final message for the Empire's forces, one that would echo through their ranks for years to come. You thought Earth was weak. Now you know. We are the hunters. And you are the prey. The Galactic Empire had learned the hard way that Earth was not to be conquered. And as their ships disappeared into the void of space, the SEALs stood as a testament to humanity's strength, ready to defend their home against whatever came next. The battle was over, but the war had only just begun. Spectre knew that Earth was ready.